So there's been a lot of talk about this chapter, some in positive ways, but a lot in negative ways. There seems to be this general consensus that this chapter isn't that good. And I was a little bit confused by this. I sat here and I was like, wait, what don't we like? What's going on here? And after going through it a couple of different times and just letting the chapter sit within my head, I don't necessarily feel the same way. I feel like I can see maybe the problems that people have, the issues or things that they think are maybe weirdly placed or just inappropriate timing wise. But for myself, I feel like it's kind of a nice change of pace. It's a little bit refreshing and kind of serves as a breather between a lot of the serious moments that are about to take place. The way that I think about it is that previously, the past handful of chapters have been very heavy, emotionally, mentally, action orientated, you name it. And while those have been great and wonderful, having that constantly 24/7 pedal to the floor doesn't really serve much more of a purpose. Once it's utilized, once it's gained its traction, there's not much higher that you can go with it. If anything, it actually becomes repetitive. It becomes too much, and you want to reel your audience back down to a simmer. This is what I believe this chapter does. It serves a purpose in a way to allow you to breathe while providing a bit of comedic relief. This would be in hope that later on, which we can definitely expect, most likely just around the corner even, that things are about to get serious once again. Even the end of the chapter alludes to something pretty serious. A lot of these complaints seem to be centered around Yorozu. They seem to be the star of this chapter. And while this otherworldly obsession and or love that Yorozu has for Sukuna is very volatile, because it comes off within a playful manner, it may feel a little bit jarring for people. It may be a big reason why you don't really enjoy it. If you do feel that way, that's okay. I think this chapter does provide a good breather and a nice point of recollecting our thoughts before we jump more so into big development points and moving forward towards the ending of the story. We're setting a lot of things up, putting things in motion, and also taking Sukuna's new attitude and foundation for a test drive. We've seen bits and pieces of what he's capable of. We have the pre-recognized idea that he's really powerful, so we need to visually see it in a way that is convincing, in more of a showy type of way. You can argue that we have got that with Yuji and Maki, but it's a lot different when you pair them up with someone that's 1,000 years ago that knows Sukuna, that is even obsessed with him, that has a lot of power of their own, works really well to show Sukuna within a new light, both emotionally, mentally, and physically with this fight. It's not going to be some sort of new big revelation of things we haven't seen before, but fine-tuning the Sukuna experience just to fill in whatever gaps may be missing. This chapter does that. Even though this fight is rather simple between Sukuna and Yorozu, there's a lot of context between certain things that I think is very worthwhile to actually gain, whether it be passively or directly. Sukuna's attitude, for one, I think is a nice showcase within here. Even against someone that's 1,000 years ago that he's had experiences with before, he seems a little bit different. He doesn't seem overly as aggressive as usual and more laid back, more questionable even. Almost like he doesn't really care. And I'm curious on why he acts this way towards Yorozu and not really anyone else. Maybe it's more akin to how he acts to Urume, for example. It's not necessarily clarified, but it's odd to place Sukuna's personality within this chapter. He doesn't really seem all too fazed about the opponent that's in front of him, yet he's not completely undermining them. He recognizes that they can be a threat if they want to be, and he still responds in a manner that isn't scared but justified. There's a tiny little slice of that Akatami hand-to-hand combat, which personally I really enjoy. I know a lot of people kind of feel conflicted when it comes to Akatami's hand-to-hand combat, in some people saying that it feels a little bit too clustered and not as clear or precise, but for some reason I enjoy the type of style that Akatami goes for, and mixing that with his artwork, it feels very cinematic in a way. Having that style associated with hand-to-hand combat I think is really brilliant. It's kind of a choice design-wise, and I feel like Akatami does this on purpose. There's a lot of inspiration from martial arts movies, so I wouldn't be surprised if the way he even approaches these fights is with those movies in mind. Basically very bold and direct and massive, powerful attacks. Stuff that you can really see and feel, and it kind of gets the weight across really well. Sometimes it it can get a little bit clustered with the speed of the attacks and how he likes to draw these characters clashing with one another. A lot of hands and legs being thrown around and having the after image of those body parts still lingering. So that's where a lot of people don't necessarily enjoy it, because it feels like it's too much. Personally, I find it to be a nice touch. It's a pretty simple trade of blows, but this is where you kind of get Yorozu's personality for the first time. Something a lot more playful, eerily so, but very obsessive, love-induced and full-on, as it kind of becomes a representation of her character. This love obsession makes her wear faces that is very goofy, very over the top. This is a point that I think a lot of people will not like, because when you clash this with Sukuna, it feels almost like two complete opposites trying to play tug of war with one another. They just don't mesh well together. Sukuna's this big, serious, emotionless individual, and then you have Yorozu, someone that's obsessed with him, being goofy and playful and having all of these cute and quirky facial expressions. Opposite demeanors clashing, just a weird feeling, but funny enough, I feel like it works kind of well. Not only with what I said before in terms of having a breathing point, allowing us to kind of digest information at a pace that feels very appropriate, but it doubles back and works for Yorozu's character being rather scary. He even tries to make a deal with Sukuna, which he partially kind of takes. He doesn't really care what happens to him if he loses this battle, even though he thinks he's not going to. That's why he makes the deal anyway. That if he loses, Yorozu can do whatever they want with his body. Thought process focuses entirely on that. And I think this is the first time you see what type of character they truly are. This is their vital heartbeat, what they completely center around. See, what I mean by this is that you actually see it flip between different stages of that love, appreciation, obsession. Because at one point it's very playful and goofy, and then another it's extremely aggressive. I think this showcase of Yorozu's personality and how it isn't just one-dimensional when it comes to love, it's very much segmented into different, I guess, altitudes of the experience. It goes a long way in their response to whatever Sukuna does, because Sukuna doesn't really play around all too much from here, because he sees the severity of it and he starts to use his abilities. And you'll notice that he's only using Megami's abilities, which genuinely annoys Yorozu quite a bit. They want to see his shrine, they want to see his abilities, his techniques, and kind of takes it as a place of disrespect, that Yorozu isn't good enough or worthy enough for Sukuna's natural techniques. I think we get to see a good but different showcase of Megami's abilities. His divine dogs are much different. They're more shadowy this time, if that makes sense. They're not like a physical manifestation or object, which is weird to say when it comes to anything Megami Shadow related, but visually they're very much different, and they seem more of like a amalgamation of all the dogs combined into one big shadow. It's very interesting how it's used. It doesn't seem all too destructive or powerful in a way that more so it's just finesse. I say that weirdly because you do get to see the destruction that they cause and they are pretty powerful, but it seems that it's serving a purpose of distraction. So Sukuna can make his move alongside these dogs trying to attack, which would be the smartest way to go about it. A single attack from these dogs isn't going to destroy or eliminate Yorozu off the face of the earth. Once Yorozu figures out that Sukuna isn't using his abilities and is only using Megami's 10 shadows, it does not end well. They are upset. They are very angry. You get a big bunch of dialogue that's directed towards themselves when it comes to their obsession and their love, and then that aggression becomes weaponized, and you get to find out about Yorozu's curse technique, what they're capable of, and how it centers entirely around construction. The first is a liquid metal that maintains its physical properties while freely able to change shape and volume through semi-autonomous cursed energy control. But the second one is an armor of flesh inspired by a variety of borrowings from multiple strands of evolution. So you have this massive form or creature that Yorozu turns into, kind of almost similar to Mahito's design, but a little bit different and a hop, skip and jump away from Maharaga, for example, which, speaking of that, Sukuna does summon it. Ending of the chapter here is pretty vile, and the fact that we have a break next week, even sadder. I'm very much curious to see this new Maharaga, because a lot of people are going to be asking, when did he tame it, the wheel things above his head, how's this going to work with Yorozu, is it going to be a massive clash? Maharaga is very powerful. I think, using Sukuna's words, he's taking Maharaga for a test drive. He does not know the response. He doesn't know what Maharaga may do. I don't think that he thinks that he has tamed it, because physically it hasn't been done off screen. Why would he say test drive? That may seem picky on what words, but the way that I like to view Maharaga when it comes to taming is the abundance of cursed energy. These creatures are intelligent. They're not just outright silly or docile. In this situation, if Sukuna were to go to Maharaga and that being or entity just sensed how much cursed energy that he had and how it would never potentially win against him, don't you think it would naturally become tame and work underneath him? If an overwhelming power is in front of you, naturally, just by obedience, just by instinct, you will fall lower. And this isn't to devalue Maharaga, but more so to upvalue Sukuna's pressure, his being, his entity, that just taking over Megami's body and going through the bathing process has allowed every creature to expand its capabilities in a whole new way. We've seen it already. Has been different. It's been evolved. It's been even more powerful. Maharaga should operate the same way. The difference is that it was never tame, but maybe it doesn't have to be directly. If Maharaga has felt that this new individual within Megami's body is drastically more powerful, I wouldn't be surprised if they naturally fell into line. Who knows, but we're gonna have to wait 2 weeks for it, unfortunately. But what I would like to hear is all of your thoughts, all of your theories, concerns, and what you'd like to see next time right now. Let me know how you feel. Thank you.